survey of a bunch of wild populations of ginseng all across New England, and then sequencing the genome of all those plants to try to understand how they're all related to each other and to other ginseng populations across the species range. And so our populations here are much smaller and more isolated than they are further south in Appalachia and in parts of the Midwest. And part of it is that we just have a longer history of harvesting and export and trade because, like ginseng is tied to the history of colonization and westward expansion, and that started in, French Canada and New England. And so a lot of the ginseng was just harvested off the landscape much earlier than it was in other places, and there's sort of more of this culture of stewarding populations and also poaching and just over harvesting further south in Appalachia. That's sort of like where that culture of wild harvesting ginseng has kind of persisted. And so a lot of the ginseng planting stock, like if you want to buy some ginseng seed or buy some roots and start planting it on your property, you can't really find seed sources in Vermont because the populations of wild Vermont ginseng are so small and isolated, and the states really work to protect that information to prevent people from coming and digging it all up because it's so valuable. And so sort of in order to establish some sources of locally adapted planting stock, we kind of first have to find out like where are those, and like some forest farmers are wild harvesters are under the impression that all of it has been planted because people have been moving this plant around for centuries because of its value in like global markets. Like even in the 1800s and late 1700s, ginseng was being exported from the US to China. And so, so we're kind of part of finding out, like, is this, more closely related to populations in southern Appalachia? Is it more closely related to populations in Ontario or the Midwest where it's commercially cultivated?